Nestled at the edge of a bustling city, our neighborhood boasts a unique charm, with tree-lined streets and a tightly knit community where everyone knows each other's names. The Homeowners Association, HOA, serves as the governing body, enforcing rules aimed at maintaining the aesthetic and value of our properties. While the HOA can be a source of pride, it also acts as a hotbed for drama. Enter the Karen archetype. This term, often used to describe entitled behavior, has taken on a life of its own in our corner of the world. In this suburban paradise, Karen embodies many of the stereotypes associated with her name. She is assertive, seeks to impose her views, and is quick to escalate minor disagreements into major confrontations. Her penchant for wielding the HOA guidelines like a sword makes her a figure both feared and begrudged among neighbors. As residents, we often found ourselves tiptoeing around her whims, adhering to her standards to avoid potential conflict. However, beneath her seemingly poised exterior lies an obsession with control that ultimately leads to explosive situations, like the incident surrounding my beloved tree. In this neighborhood, where everyone wants to uphold property values and maintain harmony, Karen's presence creates an undercurrent of tension. A routine dispute about landscaping turned into something far more significant, revealing deep-seated issues not just between one homeowner and another, but within the community as a whole. It was a clear reminder of how one person's relentless pursuit of order can spiral into chaos, disrupting the tranquility we all sought to preserve in our idyllic surroundings. At the heart of my property stood a magnificent oak tree, its sprawling branches a testament to decades of growth and resilience. Valued at an estimated $200,000, this tree was not just a natural wonder, it was a living piece of history that had witnessed countless seasons and stories unfold in our neighborhood. Its gnarled trunk and lush green canopy provided shade on hot summer days, offering a gathering spot for neighbors seeking respite or children playing hide-and-seek in its embrace. The oak tree held deep sentimental value for my family, having been planted by my grandfather when he first built our home. It was a symbol of family legacy and continuity, cherished by generations. Neighbors often remarked on its grandeur, noting how it added character to the street and attracted birds and wildlife, enhancing the community's natural beauty. Beyond its aesthetic appeal, the tree played a vital role in the local ecosystem. Its roots helped prevent soil erosion, while its leaves contributed to cleaner air. Many residents took pride in this majestic giant, frequently stopping to admire it during their daily walks. However, as tensions with Karen escalated, the significance of the tree became overshadowed by her obsession with control and conformity. To her, it was merely an obstacle that infringed upon her vision for the neighborhood, an unwelcome reminder of nature's unpredictability amid her quest for order. Little did she know that her reckless decision to cut it down would not only destroy a beloved landmark but also set off a chain of events that would forever alter the dynamics of our community. As the HOA imposed stricter regulations on landscaping and property aesthetics, a rift began to form within our otherwise close-knit community. Initially, these rules seemed benign, intended to uphold property values and maintain the charming appeal of our neighborhood. However, they quickly changed from advisory to authoritarian. It wasn't long before Karen seized this opportunity, wielding the HOA guidelines like a weapon in her ongoing quest for control. Each month brought new restrictions, flowerbed colors were standardized, fence heights were scrutinized, and even the types of trees permissible in front yards were debated. Karen made it her personal mission to enforce these rules with an iron fist, often calling out neighbors for perceived infractions. This atmosphere of surveillance and judgment bred resentment and fear, causing many residents to tread lightly around her and the HOA's ever-watchful eyes. I found myself pulled into this tense dynamic when Karen confronted me about my landscaping choices, specifically, my use of native plants that flourished beautifully around the oak tree. In her view, they were an eyesore that detracted from her vision of uniformity. Our discussions grew increasingly heated as I tried to justify my choices while also expressing my deep attachment to our home and its history. What started as disagreements about gardens soon escalated into broader disputes over property lines and rights. Karen's relentless pursuit of conformity alienated several neighbors whom I had shared cheerful conversations with in the past. Slowly but surely, a palpable divide emerged between those loyal to Karen's strict interpretations of the HOA rules and those who longed for individual expression, setting the stage for an inevitable confrontation that would change everything. The moment I learned that Karen had made the audacious decision to chop down my oak tree, I was filled with disbelief and anger. Motivated by a desire for uniformity and control, she saw the tree as an obstruction to her vision of the neighborhood. After months of escalating tensions, she had decided to take matters into her own hands, believing that getting rid of the tree would send a message that dissent would not be tolerated. On an unassuming Tuesday morning, I received a frantic call from a neighbor who had witnessed the scene unfold. Karen had hired a team of landscapers, citing vague HOA regulations to justify her actions. Armed with chainsaws and a sense of entitlement, they arrived at my property and began preparing to cut down the majestic oak. My heart raced as I rushed home, fearing what I might find. Despite the absence of prior warnings, Karen had approached the situation believing she was acting in the best interest of our community. She had discussed her frustrations with me in past conversations, claiming my landscaping was detrimental to property values, yet I never imagined she would resort to such drastic measures. When I arrived at my home, I found her standing proudly beside the workers as they marked the tree for removal, her expression a mix of satisfaction and resolve. The moment the chainsaw roared to life was surreal. As the first cuts penetrated the trunk, I felt a visceral panic rise within me. Shouts of protest erupted from neighbors gathering at the scene, but Karen remained unmoved by their concerns, fixated on her determination to eradicate what she deemed an eyesore. Little did she know that this impulsive act would set off a chain reaction of chaos that none of us could anticipate. The aftermath of the tree being cut down was nothing short of chaotic. As the dust settled from the chainsaw's roar, a profound silence enveloped the neighborhood, interrupted only by murmurs of disbelief from gathered onlookers. Many residents who had once admired the oak's grandeur now stood in shock, grappling with the loss of a beloved landmark that had been an integral part of our community for as long as anyone could remember. Emotionally, I felt a mix of grief and rage, grief for the tree itself, which had provided shade and beauty, and rage directed at Karen for her reckless disregard for its significance. The gaping hole where the oak once stood felt like a void in both my yard and my heart, a stark reminder of how one person's actions could so drastically alter our environment. Beyond the emotional toll, there were practical consequences. Without its extensive root system, soil erosion became an immediate concern. Rainwater began to wash away the earth beneath where the tree had stood, leaving my property vulnerable. Additionally, my home suddenly lacked the shade that had kept it cool during scorching summer days, raising concerns about increased energy costs. Neighbors lamented the loss as well, sharing stories about family gatherings and childhood memories linked to the tree. The aesthetics of our street changed dramatically. What had once been a picturesque view was now marred by barren ground and exposed roots. This incident not only heightened tensions with Karen but also sparked discussions among residents about community values and individual rights, questions that would linger long after the last remnants of the tree were cleared away. Just days after the oak tree was cut down, a sudden storm swept through the neighborhood, bringing fierce winds and heavy rain. The ground, already weakened and unstable from the absence of the tree's extensive root system, struggled to absorb the deluge. I watched anxiously as dark clouds gathered overhead, fearing that the recent change in our landscape might have unforeseen consequences. As the storm intensified, my phone buzzed with urgent messages from neighbors warning of rising water levels. They were particularly concerned about Karen's car parked right under the spot where our beloved oak once stood. In her attempt to tout her victory over the tree, she had ignored my warnings about the dangers of removing it. The exposed earth was now a muddy mess, unable to support any weight. Suddenly, with a loud crack that echoed through the air, I watched as a large limb from a nearby tree, weakened by the harsh conditions, broke free and fell from its perch. The chaotic wind and rain conspired against it, and it landed directly on Karen's car, which was parked perilously close to where the oak had been. The sound of shattering glass mingled with the roar of the storm as I felt a mixture of concern and disbelief wash over me. As neighbors gathered to assess the situation amidst the chaotic weather, I could see Karen's shock transform into fury. She had fought so hard for conformity and control but now faced the irony of having her car significantly damaged due to her own actions and neglect. The incident ignited a new layer of conflict between us, one fueled not only by bitterness but also by the undeniable consequences of her earlier decision to remove the tree that had stood for decades. Karen's reaction to the incident was nothing short of dramatic, embodying her ever-increasing sense of entitlement. Within hours of the storm subsiding, she was already plotting her next move. Fueled by a mix of anger and indignation, Karen decided to sue me for damages to her car, claiming that my negligence over the tree's removal had directly led to the mishap. She argued that because I failed to prevent the tree's removal, I was liable for any resulting damage, an assertion that seemed absurd to many in our community. As word spread about her lawsuit, reactions among neighbors varied from disbelief to outright laughter. For those who had witnessed Karen's relentless pursuit of conformity at all costs, her blame-shifting felt not only unreasonable but also hypocritical. Many echoed the sentiment that she had created the very situation she now sought to exploit. Rather than taking responsibility for parking under a tree that she had called an eyesore just days before, she was attempting to paint herself as the victim. The lawsuit quickly became the talk of our neighborhood, turning what was already a fractured community into an even more contentious environment. Friends of mine who had supported her initial crusade against my oak now found themselves questioning their own allegiance as they watched her navigate her legal battle with what they perceived as a complete lack of self-awareness. Neighbors gathered in informal discussions, sharing their incredulity and frustration over Karen's actions. No longer were we focused solely on the loss of the tree. Instead, we were embroiled in debates around personal accountability and the ripple effects of one person's decisions. The escalating conflict stirred resentment and confusion, proving that in our quest for order and conformity, we had stumbled into a chaotic battle that threatened to overshadow everything we valued in our close-knit community. As the legal battle began, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation and a bit of absurdity. Karen wasted no time in filing her lawsuit, and soon we were embroiled in a series of court proceedings that would capture the attention of our community. The initial hearings saw both sides presenting their arguments, each more theatrical than the last. Karen's lawyer argued that my negligence in allowing the oak's removal directly led to the damage of her car, painting me as the villain in this saga. I, on the other hand, presented my case with a mixture of incredulity and humor. How could I be responsible for a fallen branch from a tree that had remained standing until it was cut down by Karen herself? My attorney and I emphasized her reckless disregard for the warnings about parking under trees, especially considering her previous disdain for the oak. One particularly humorous moment arose when Karen's lawyer attempted to demonstrate how an improperly parked car could be an environmental hazard. They brought in a prop car, which ended up blocking half the courtroom aisle. The judge couldn't help but chuckle as court staff struggled to maneuver around it. Even Karen seemed momentarily bemused as her serious claims took an unexpected turn toward farce. Throughout the proceedings, it became clear that the courtroom antics were only spotlighting Karen's increasingly unreasonable stance. Neighbors attended the hearings out of curiosity, some even wielding popcorn like it was a movie premiere. As discussions around responsibility and community norms came to light, we found ourselves immersed not just in a legal dispute but also a communal catharsis, where laughter mingled with frustration over the path our neighborhood had taken. This legal battle had morphed into a spectacle, one that would redefine not only our relationships with each other but also the fabric of our community itself. As the legal proceedings continued, conversations among neighbors became more animated, revealing a wide range of perspectives on both the tree and Karen's actions. Many residents who had once supported her strict adherence to HOA rules began to voice their concerns, questioning whether her desire for conformity had gone too far. The removal of the oak tree was viewed as not just a personal loss but as an assault on the character of the neighborhood itself. Some neighbors expressed sympathy for my plight, recognizing the tree's significance and lamenting its absence. They shared fond memories, family gatherings under its branches and the shade it provided during summer barbecues. This collective nostalgia reinforced a sense of community that Karen's actions had disrupted. Conversations in yards and at local coffee shops often turned to discussions about the balance between individual rights and community standards, with many advocating for a more inclusive approach to property rules. Conversely, a segment of residents remained staunchly loyal to Karen, believing that her intentions were rooted in preserving property values and aesthetic uniformity. These supporters often echoed her claims of victimhood, arguing that my resistance to HOA rules had created chaos within our community. They saw her lawsuit as a necessary step toward accountability, further polarizing the neighborhood. The situation culminated in a town hall meeting where emotions ran high. Neighbors passionately debated whether Karen's behavior was reasonable or if it exemplified an overreach of authority. As tensions flared, it became clear that this conflict had ignited deeper issues within our community, issues around control, responsibility, and how we define ourselves as neighbors. What started as a dispute over a tree had evolved into a significant reflection on our values and interactions as a community, reshaping relationships in ways no one could have anticipated. After several weeks of intense court sessions, the judge finally rendered a decision that would resonate throughout our community. In an unexpected turn, the court ruled in my favor, dismissing Karen's claims of negligence and holding her accountable for her own actions. The judge highlighted that her decision to cut down the oak tree had set off a chain reaction of events leading to her car's damage, thus she could not shift blame onto me. Financially, the outcome meant that Karen was responsible for reimbursing me for a portion of my legal fees, a sum that barely scratched the surface of what I had lost with the tree's removal but felt like a small victory amidst the turmoil. For many in the neighborhood, this verdict was seen as a validation of individual rights against an overreaching HOA figure. It marked a significant moment where community members began to reassess their values surrounding property and personal expression. However, the resolution did not come without its complications. While some neighbors celebrated the ruling as a triumph over Karen's authoritarian tendencies, others were concerned about the repercussions it might have for future HOA governance. Conversations shifted from just the loss of the tree to discussions about how we could establish more balanced community guidelines that respected individual expressions without stifling order. The lawsuit's conclusion fostered a renewed sense of unity among many residents who had previously aligned with Karen. It sparked efforts to create an open forum for discussing HOA policies, encouraging transparency and collaboration. While Karen remained entrenched in her viewpoint, feeling wronged by the entire process, many in our community began to embrace a more cooperative spirit, recognizing that our neighborhood's strength lay in its diversity of thought and mutual respect. The conflict ultimately became a catalyst for positive change, reshaping our relationships and laying the groundwork for a more inclusive community moving forward. Reflecting on the tumultuous events surrounding the oak tree's removal and the subsequent legal battle, it's clear that this experience has imparted significant lessons about ownership, community dynamics, and the delicate balance between individual rights and collective harmony. Homeownership often comes with a deep emotional attachment to one's property, as evidenced by my connection to the oak tree, which was not only a physical presence but also a symbol of family history and community identity. However, this incident underscored the potential pitfalls of absolute authority within homeowners associations. While HOAs exist to maintain community standards and property values, unchecked power can lead to conflicts that fracture relationships among neighbors. The rigid enforcement of rules, as seen through Karen's actions, can sometimes overshadow the nuances of personal expression and neighborly respect. The discussions that unfolded during the legal proceedings prompted us all to reassess our values as a community. Conversations shifted toward creating guidelines that acknowledge individual expression while still upholding communal aesthetics. We learned that fostering an environment of open dialogue could prevent misunderstandings and facilitate cooperation. As we move forward, it's vital to remember that ownership comes with responsibility, not just for our properties but for our roles within the community. By cultivating a spirit of collaboration and empathy, we can better navigate future conflicts. This experience has ultimately strengthened our neighborhood's fabric, reminding us that while we may hold different views on property rights, our shared commitment to creating a harmonious living environment remains paramount. Embracing diversity in thought and perspective will be essential as we strive for a more equitable balance between individual freedoms and community cohesion.